All right, we're live. So today what I want to do is create a Dungeon Essentials pack through Photoshop, and those will be printed out on cardstock and glued to chipboard, and then they can be used for immediate tabletop play. So I'm going to go down sort of a rough list that I have in my head, and I'll go ahead and get those printed out and uploaded onto the next video, but for now I'm going to show you the design process. So we're going to be doing different types of tiles. We're going to do corridors, rooms, and door and wall tiles. And hopefully by the end of this stream, we will be at our funding goal so that everyone can have these tiles for free over on Patreon. So I'm going to get started. I've got my box tool, and I think what I want to do is kind of do it in a sort of logical sort of sequence, starting with the dungeon entrance, which would be stairs going down. I have the grid set up so that each box like this is 5 feet across, and I typically do 10 feet wide and 6 boxes high, which would be 30 feet. So I'm going to drag this out. I have that set to a 1/2 inch with the border starting on the outside and working outward. So there's that. That's on layer 1. I'm going to add a second layer and drag it under, and that will be my flat. So I think I'm just going to go with a sort of neutral color over on the warm side of things, and take the stroke off. Go ahead and fill that in. And then on top of that, I'm going to add another layer. It'll be multiply. And I'll take out my airbrush. I have it set to opacity pressure, and I also have it set to 30% airbrush flow. So I'm gonna increase the size a little bit, make it completely soft, and I'm gonna go ahead and move the cursor along the grid lines to create the grid. Actually, as a matter of fact, since this is a set of stairs going down, I'm going to take those center tiles out, or the center line out. Sorry. Now the grid line, actually you can it'll snap the line in place. So even if you're not very good at drawing freehand, that line will actually end up straight because of the snapping feature to the grid. Okay, so we don't need the grid anymore. It's only used to mark out the tiles. So we can go ahead and increase the airbrush size, but keep the softness. I want to build up the shadow. So we're going to say that the light's coming from the top, from the outside of the dungeon, and it's going to get progressively darker as you go down. Sort of like what you would see on like that Warhammer Quest tile set. So I really like this airbrush setting because you can it's like shading with the side of a pencil. It responds really well to pressure sensitivity. Alright, and then we're going to go along the sides too. Okay, I want to deepen that shadow up just a little bit. Okay. Alright, I'm going to bump that back down, darken this up a little bit more, and go back in and emphasize the tiles a little bit more. And this is where I'm going to go in and add some cracks to give a little bit more visual interest. You can do this from imagination, but I find that studying actual cracked stone and concrete, you know, finding some visual references online will really help to sell it. It's just that I've already done that. I use that to make a few videos already, and I kind of have an idea how I like them to look. So they're a little stylized, but they're basically based on studying the real thing. So I don't want to go too crazy because, like I've said in other videos, this is a play aid for tabletop gaming. You know, we're not trying to make a masterpiece. And you don't have to go crazy with getting all your line weights, you know, perfectly nuanced, and you don't want to spend, you know, 20 minutes or a half hour on one tile, because you're going to go back in and create a lighting effect, which is really going to help bring out the depth, more so than spending a whole lot of time getting your lines just right. And with that being said, I'm going to add another layer. I'm going to set it to linear dodge add. So what that does is creates a lighting effect when you hover over it. Very soft, subtle. But I think I want this to look warmer, like it's coming from the outside. So I'm going to back out of that. select that color and go warmer with it. It still looks a little cool. Let's try this. Still too cool. Let's try this. Okay, that's a little bit better. Now here is where you can fine-tune these cracks in a sort of reverse painting method where you edge up against it and you can alter the thickness. Okay, so since light's coming from the top, the brightest point is going to be at this very top edge. So I'm pushing down the hardest on the tablet right here. Then as we work our way down, we're going to progressively use less and less pressure, and we're going to cool the color down as well. So I'll take this yellow, move it this direction. It'll get darker in value and more desaturated, and I'll use less pressure. And I'll be careful not to go too much into these shadows here, because that will ruin the depth effect that we created with the cast shadow. Now I'm going to color all these sections in lightly and work my way down, and then I'll go back in and do a final pass and just adjust color intensity one last time. So we're going to make our way down to the third stair. There's something about coloring in these lines. It's like really, I could do this all day with like an audiobook playing in the background. Okay, shift the color again. Again. And you notice how there's a lot less detail the further down we get, because it just doesn't matter. We're trying to sell the light and dark effect. And lastly, there's our bottom step. Okay, let's go back to the top. Let's grab that color right there. Let's increase this a little bit. And we're just going to do a final pass. Alright, that looks good. Now, I'm going to click on that shadow layer and grab my eraser and get rid of some of that stuff. Now I have it sized obviously on the grid to be the actual size that you're going to get when you print it out. So when you print it out, make sure that your settings just print the thing as at the size that it is. Don't mess with the settings, and it'll spit it out exactly the size you need to play with 28 millimeter scale miniatures. Alright, so what I do when I have a finished tile is I'll go ahead and select all of the layers. And merge the visible layers. And then I'll go ahead and save that and export it. But we're going to move on to the next room. So I don't really have it planned out in my head. Like I said, it's just going to be sort of a generic little thing going on. Maybe next time, if these live streams become, you know, if they start to catch on a little bit, I'll create like a little random dungeon generator, and I'll follow along with that. But for now, I think I'm going to go with just something off the top of my head. So I'll do like a, I don't know, 4 or 5 by 5 room. So we'll start here with a new layer, bring the grid back, and grab my blocking tool. Okay. So there's the room, simple 4x4, which is what, 20 by 20 feet? Standard typical room. And what I can do is just swap out the colors and make a variety of them, so I don't have to keep making them over and over again. So there's that. I'm going to hit enter. And we're going to create a multiply layer to draw in the tile outlines. Actually, before that, we are going to do a fill layer. So let's try a different color. Let's do something like a tan. I want to leave this setting here for when I draw out the outlines for the next few tiles. So I'm just going to go in on this fill layer and just use a flat color brush. Takes a little bit longer, but I don't like messing with the settings. So there's that. We'll switch over to multiply, get our dark color, and drop this down. Take the hardness all the way off on our airbrush. And with that grid activated, the lines will snap straight, so you don't have to worry about being able to draw a straight line, because it'll do it for you. And then, I don't know, we can darken it in around the corners. Just a little bit. And then let's remove the grid. That way our lines can sort of bleed over into the tiles a little bit. Keep it a little random. Sketchy. That actually makes it look better because these are dungeons. They're not supposed to... They're not, you know, brand new dwarven masterpieces. They're either really old dwarven masterpieces or something else. Actually, with that being said, if these live streams work out, I'm not only will I make the random dungeon generator episodes, but I'll be doing specific themes as well, because there's basically an infinite, endless variety of themes that you can explore with this. And they'll all be for free as long as I can hit my my goal, my tipping goal. All right, that's looking good. What I want to do next is increase the size of my airbrush and go around the corners and edges. So kind of like the Warhammer tiles, I want it to look like the torchlight is kind of in the center of the room. But I don't want to go too wild, because you want to be able to see the tiles, even the ones that are in the corners. And if it gets too dark, instead of erasing it, you're on that layer, just go ahead and add an adjustment. Just bump the brightness up a little bit. See? Okay. So I'm going to go back, bring that down. Sometimes using a smaller brush makes the line feel harder, even though you didn't change the hardness or the softness at all. I don't like that. It's a little too spidery. So I'll just Control Z and get rid of it. And I'll bring it up a little bit. Yeah, that's good. Now, I think it's important, this line, the one I'm drawing right now for the cracks, it shouldn't be as dark as this, because this is important. This is what you need to see when you're playing, so you know what spot you're standing on. If we have too much detail and too much darkness in these cracks, it makes these lines harder to see, and it becomes a little bit more difficult to place your figures. So use light pressure, or if you're hand drawing these, same deal. If you're using a pen, use a thinner pen. Use a thicker pen for this. So I decided to do live streaming because, I decided to try live streaming. I actually tried it once last year with miniature painting, but I didn't have the right setup, and I was arching my back too much trying to work around the camera and have a palette set up with a palette camera. But the reason why I'm deciding to try it now is because I don't have a whole lot of free time outside of work, especially it's mostly because of the commute. I lose 2 hours every day just in the commute, which is time that I could be spending, making videos. So I feel like if I can do one long live stream a week, I can try to hit my tipping goal, and I'll have enough content to sort of break up into some long form videos to break up throughout the week. So it's the most practical, economical thing I can do with my work schedule being the way that it is. And it keeps me from wanting to be perfect and script things and edit to perfection, which will slow down the process quite a bit. And really, I mean, if I could just make these without having to promote it through video, I would paint miniatures and make these dungeon tiles and be fine with it, but I need the ability to promote what I'm making. Okay, so that's good. I'm happy with it. I'm just gonna touch up some edges around the black border. Okay. Now I'll switch to the highlight color. And I'll go warmer with it, because it's torchlight. Starting in the center and working out. The center will have the most pressure, the lightest value, and we'll barely be touching the canvas once we get to the outside. Now I'm going to do like a light pass to start, and then I'll go back like I did with the stairs and make a final pass where I'll put the pressure down most heavily. You'll see me squinting my eyes. I'll close one eye and make my other eye kind of blurry, just to get an overall idea of the design. Now, if you don't like doing that, if it strains your eyes, you can hit a control dash, and that'll shrink it way down. You can get that sense that I do when I squint. And to bring it back to full size, you just hit Control 0. This is so relaxing. I love it. When I was doing a lot of oil painting, my favorite part was sort of building up this three-dimensionality. So when blocking in and doing the drawing was kind of boring, but it was when you started to see that three-dimensionality come out, it's just so exciting. And it's a lot easier and faster to do it with digital painting than it is to do with oil paints, because oil paints dry really slowly, and acrylics are good because they dry fast, but they also change value when they dry, so that the darks get lighter, the lights get darker, the whole entire painting gets more matte. And there's just something about the pigments suspended in oil that just make the finished painting look so much deeper and richer. So I like that trade-off, but I also really enjoy this digital process a lot. Okay, so there's the first pass. I'm going to go ahead and increase the size a little bit, warm the color up just a little bit, and do my final pass in the middle. Now I'm pressing down about 2 or 3 times as hard as I was before, especially in this kind of central area where I said I wanted the torchlight to be a little brighter. And then as I work my way out, obviously the pressure gets less and less. Now, if this artwork style, if you're following along at some point, if it's too soft for you, you can go back in and just use like a flat brush, like a brush that doesn't have any softness to it and a hard edge, and you can sharpen these up really easily. And as a matter of fact, I think I'm going to go back in to my multiply layer and just harden some of these up, like deepen the shadows and the cracks. Now, because we don't have the grid, my hand isn't exactly giving me straight lines, but that's actually a benefit. I just use the grid to get it kind of initially laid in. You can start, start with a precise grid, and then you can kind of progressively sort of let the random factor play in. Okay, that's pretty good. I'm going to call it done. I'm just going to clean up the edges here. Now these tiles, they drop for my paid Patreon members automatically, but they'll be available to everyone of my members, even my free members, if I hit my tipping goal on these live streams. So that one's ready to go. I will get rid of that background and merge those all down to a single layer for printing. And I'll go in and duplicate it and change the color a little bit for, room variety. So to do that, I will go into Adjustments, Hue Saturation. Ooh, a green room. And let's bring the lightness down. That way we can build the highlights back up. Okay. We'll make it a... never mind. We'll add a... what is it? Linear dodge layer on top of that. Grab that color. Whoops, wrong one. Grab that color. Let's go a little bit more bright and saturated and build that light up. The other thing you can do when you're building this light up, you can actually make more lines like what I did right there. So I'll do it again. I'll make a shape and then I'll leave some of that darker green showing. So it gives the effect of a softer line, which helps to sell the broken tiles a little bit more. But you just have to be careful that you don't overdo it because you don't want that visual interest to compete with the grid. This would be a really good room to have like a green glowing phantom in the center. That's pretty close. I'm going to increase the size just a little bit to soften some of that other stuff up. we'll call that one done too. So we've got the stairs leading down, dungeon room 1, dungeon room 2. Let's make another corridor. So get rid of that. Bring our grid back. Okay, and I'm looking for something around 58 pixels. The other thing too, instead of like trying to go and be like make this perfectly smooth line, you can, because it snaps to the grid line, you can act almost like you're sketching it in. And it adds some of that unique variation that you see there. And let something like that happen, where I wanted to follow along that grid line there, and that'll just be, inspiration for some other detail. All right. Now, real quick, I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to turn those off. This will be a normal layer. I'll go in with my regular brush. See? And actually, I'm going to get rid of that and turn on this opacity. We'll do like a kind of like a skull laying down on the dungeon floor. I'm adding a fairly dark base color because we're just going to layer up the highlight anyway to make it look more three-dimensional. Okay. So now we have a little skull that we can place there, and once we get our colors worked up, we can mess with that to make it look like more like it's sitting there in the middle of the corridor with light bouncing off of it and casting a shadow and everything else. Okay, so I'm going to go back to this multiply layer here and finish working on the tiles. That might still be a little big for the skull, but I'll mess with it. So if the light's in the center here, it's going to be casting light this direction. So the shadow from the skull will actually be cast that way. Okay. Alright, time to add some crack. I don't know, for some reason I always make these little triangle things. I have to get more comfortable making curves. I'm going to be careful not to do too much detail around the skull because I want that to be a little bit more sort of viewable and not compete with the other elements over in that section there. Okay. So, thanks for everyone who's watching. I appreciate it. I think the last time I did this stream, like the mini painting, I don't think anybody watched, so having 3 people watching right now is pretty cool. Thank you. I'm just going to harden these up, darken and harden them up a little bit, because I know once we start adding that color and light, it's going to kind of get drowned out a little bit. Okay, so let's decide on a color. Let's do like a cold blue. Whoops. Forgot to put that layer behind our rectangle. There, that's better. Okay, so this guy, I think I can darken him up a little bit. So we'll do some brightness and contrast. Something like that. And then we'll do our light pass underneath our multiply pass, which is our shadow pass, because when I do that light pass, it looks like the color kind of shifts when it touches the shadow, and I don't like that. I'd rather it just be kind of separate from it. So being underneath it, I think that might help. So we'll see how that works. We'll turn the layer to that linear dodge add, and we don't actually have to change our local color. The setting of that layer. Whoa, hold on a second. What happened? Oh, wrong brush. There we go. The color of that swatch automatically lightens because we have it set to that linear dodge. So I want that light to shine on the skull there. So I'll add another one just for this skull here. Oh, he's so small. I need to get a teeny tiny brush. Another idea I had floating around, besides doing all these theme dungeons and using random dungeon generators and all that stuff, is I know my reviews of the old TSR modules did really well, but it was really tedious to have to research everything that went into it and then script it out and keep up with that schedule. But something that would be less of a creative struggle would be to, if I just made the dungeon tiles, or at least loosely inspired by the dungeon tiles for all of those old modules. What would you guys think of that? Would you rather see creating original dungeons, or would you rather explore the old TSR module lineup? Because I can make the paper miniatures too. You know, imagine all of the tiles for the Caves of Chaos and all of the monsters, the bugbears, minotaurs. I forget who else off the top of my head. But yeah, I could do all that. But just let me know in the comments if you have any ideas. Okay, that's getting there. I think I want to deepen the shadow by this skull to make him stand out just a little bit more, so you understand what he is. Oops, wrong layer. Okay. Actually, I need to lock some of these layers. That way I can just go in and not have to worry about getting... Ugh, come on. I'll just create a mask. This is almost like the equivalent of working with your little one-haired miniature painting brush. Now, if I was only going to use this skull once, I would say that this amount of detail is probably overkill. But it's something I can just reuse over and over again for all the different rooms that we make. So, adding a little bit of extra detail like the teeth isn't that big of a deal. Now it looks a little more realistic, or you kind of get what that is a little bit more seeing it there. And I think I'm just going to do one more, I'm going to shrink him down actually. Okay, that looks a little bit more realistic. Okay, one last thing I'm going to do is just one more pass on the light. I'm going to make it warmer. And then this will be good to go. Let's go warmer. Okay, so if you're just now watching, these tiles are going straight to my supporters over on Patreon. If and when I hit my tip goal, these will be available to all free members as well. Alright, and clean them up and he'll be good to go. I gotta find the layer that's on. There you are. I'm gonna duplicate him before I merge everything down. Okay, so we have a corridor, we have a green room, we have a tan room, we have the stair entrance. So I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to make a wall for one of these rooms here with a doorway. So go with something like this. We'll bring our grid back. So that was 4 squares wide. We'll do 3 squares high. Oops. Alright, I have to make the flap that goes at the bottom there, so it'll actually sit on the table. Okay. So we're going to say the door's in the center. So we'll actually start it here and here. That I want it a little bit wider actually. So we'll start it here and here and go up to here. And then we'll say the stonework goes every ½ inch. Now don't worry, it's not going to look this perfect. Although I guess maybe some of you like it that way, but once we add in the cracks and the lighting and everything else. Okay. I was trying to make the top of that door curved, but it, like I said, it snaps to those lines, so I'll have to take the grid off if I decide I want to do that. Okay. Let's go ahead and do that. I gotta learn what's the shortcut to get that grid on showing. So it's Control apostrophe. Okay. I'm just gonna make like random holes first instead of starting with the cracks again. You know, another cool thing I was thinking of that I'd really like to do if these videos catch on is if, you know, as soon as I got done with the room, that someone could help me, you know, print them off and mount them to the chipboard and get them on the table live as I'm working on these, so we can kind of see it, what it looks like physically, how it's physically taking shape as I'm building it. Unfortunately, for right now, I'm not going to be able to update that until the next video. Okay, so we'll say that there's like some of these like iron bands. Oops. And like that door handle. So I almost forgot to block in the color first. So what did I say? It was going to be this guy right here. So for this room, I'm going to take this color right here. And let's do sort of like a raw umbery colored door to start with. It's dark and it's neutral. It's like a dark neutral brown on the yellow side. And it allows us to build up value and warmth. Okay, let's go back to our multiply layer. Was I using black? So the best way, I think, to do these cracks is to go in the opposite way of the pure horizontal and vertical brick mortar lines. It'll stand out a little bit better that way. And maybe one more right there. Okay. Okay, now add the shade. So I'm going to assume that the torch light is going to be concentrated right at eye level for the characters right here. So I will work my way in following that direction. A little too dark right off the bat. Do something like that. Let me actually make that even bigger. I don't even have to add highlights. It already looks kind of... It actually looks pretty cool right now. Okay. But we will add highlights. We'll do our linear dodge add. Let's find our color. We'll click on it right there. And we'll bring this down. So the light's concentrated here, so it's going to be the most concentrated around this door edge. Okay, so the thing about light is that it's gonna highlight the parts that stick out, and the shadows are going to be more pronounced. So this shadow, I don't have one yet, but I don't want the light to be right up against it like that, because that line, this rock here, or stonework, is going to cast a shadow onto this brick here. So without getting too technical, because these are supposed to, they're just for gameplay, you want to back off from that line, because we'll just say that that's the cast shadow. So I'll actually zoom in on it. That local color there is kind of like the shadow softening, and then we get the line of light. Same thing here. This line is shadow. That shadow tapers off, so we leave a little bit of that local color showing before hitting that. That's why I like using the airbrush, because it's more like simulates how light really behaves. It's in gradations. Anyway, that's how I do it. And we work from the middle out and, you know, gradually decrease the pressure that we're putting. Okay, that looks pretty good. So, okay, I'm going to do highlights on the door now. Yeah, I think like what I said earlier, we need to make this color warmer for the highlight. We'll do something like that. Let's zoom in. Ah, better. But start in the center. This is eye level right here, right where they'd be holding the torch. Oh yeah, like what I was saying before about having like that assistant actually physically printing and making the tiles as I complete them. That person could actually also help, read comments as they come in, because I can't see that right now. All I can see is Photoshop. And I would have to stop what I'm doing to read comments. I mean, I could do that, but we have a whole dungeon we have to make for my Patreon supporters. Okay, it's looking good. Now, let's press down a little bit harder. I'll just bump that up a tinge. And this is where the most concentrated light is hitting. Sweet. Okay. So is this my multiply layer? There we go. So since this is like shiny metal, I'm actually going to, no, that's way too hard. Okay, let's go back to the airbrush, but just make the airbrush like way harder. It looks a little cartoony. It looks a little cartoony up close, but I feel like if you back it off, it sells it. Okay, and then I'm going to go back to this color that we had. And just do one more light pass. a little bit right here. I think this is going to be done. Just have to clean it up, and then we'll duplicate it and flip it horizontally. I mean vertically. Second thought. Just one last little thing I want to do to make this, the stonework around the door, stand out a little bit more. There we go. That's a little bit better. Okay, let's clean it up. I want to leave just the littlest gap. That'll act as like a score line. See that? Now when you print it out, we score along that edge. And not too hard though, and then it becomes way easier to fold. The thing is, when you score to make the flaps, you're going to want to flip it around to the back side. So what I do is I nip right here and right here, because I can see the line where it needs to fold, and then I flip it around, and I line my ruler up with those little cut marks, and I score it, and then they fold the opposite direction, and they'll stay up, and you can actually slide those little tabs under the connecting rooms and corridors, and it stays up and it stands straight. So I'll go ahead and merge that. And now we have a dungeon wall with a door. We've got a corridor with skull, green room, tan room, and stairs leading down. So I'm going to take a little break, and I'll be back in a little bit to keep working. Alrighty, let's get back to this. So we've got the stairs, we've got a couple of rooms, corridor, and a dungeon wall with a doorway. Let's make the open doorway real quick, and then we'll do a boss room, and then I'll wrap it up for the day, and then see how things go, you know, as far as you know, how people viewed this video, and if I'm going to do it again. So we'll take this, duplicate it, and this is really easy because all you really have to do is take your color brush and just darken this. That's all it really is. The open doorway, you're not going to really see into the next room because everything's dark. The torch is only going to go so far. And we'll do a little bit of like a torch light effect, but it gives you a little bit more variety instead of having a closed door the whole time. So let's take this airbrush again, and we'll take that color. We'll give some sort of idea that it's reflecting off of, you know, floors and walls and stuff in there. Actually, I think I can go even lighter with that. Yeah, something like that. Okay. And we'll do the top as well. Simple. Boom. Done. Okay. Let's do a boss room. We'll say something like that. And we'll get our airbrush out, make it a little bit smaller. And like usual, actually, I gotta pick the darker color. As usual, I don't know if you can hear my dog barking in the background. The line snaps to the grid lines, which is really nice. It's nice and handy. Oop. So because it does that, you can kind of sketch without worrying about going off. I think I'm gonna do kind of like a checker pattern and like some kind of symbol in the middle. I don't know what I'm gonna do for this symbol.
I had to disappear. That guy was somebody I hadn't talked to since 9th grade, 8th grade. It was just weird talking to him.
Oops, hold on. This is, for some reason this isn't working.
You remember under the bench in the kitchen? Oh, I'm sorry. You talking? Are you doing something?
Yeah. Okay. Now I'll just go through here and fill these in. I'm thinking after I finalize this, those black strokes go away. Because I have the stroke turned off, so I don't know why those are showing up like that. Okay. Yep, that's what I thought. Okay. there's that. We can add a skull in. Or a couple of them. We can just duplicate it as much as we want. The only problem is that the lighting is showing it from hitting from a certain angle, so it really only works from one direction unless we flip it. So I'll show you how to do that. So now that it's on under transform, you just hit mirror, and then as long as it's positioned where the light will hit it, because the light will be coming from the middle, it should work. But we'll shrink him down just to give it a little bit more visual variety. Oops. Oh, come on. And get him off the line too. There. Enter. And if we keep moving him and rotating him where the highlight is, as long as that's connected to where the light is coming from, it'll work. So we'll just leave it like that. Let's get rid of the grid. And we'll go back to multiply. We'll grab the color we were using. Let's dull it down a little. Shrink it down. There. See what I mean? So the light's coming from the middle. It creates a really cool sort of cast shadow effect. as long as we get the highlights lined up with the center. Let's just go even bigger with the brush size. Let me get the sides here a little bit quicker. Now I have to decide, I'm going to make this look like it's been painted on. Like crudely painted on with I don't know if it's like goblins with their little white paint mixture, something like that. Do I want to use the airbrush or something else? I have some other brushes. I'll just have to see, because the whole theme is to keep the lighting soft. So I'll do it as another layer, but it can be a normal layer this time. And we got this one called Chalky Snow. I was using on a comic book a couple years ago. We'll see how this looks. Oops. Let's get him higher up. I might have to soften that. Oh, there's no. It's a specialty brush, so you can't soften it. That's how it's gonna look. You might be able to blur it though. Let's see if that works. No, I don't know what that did. It changed colors. Okay, that didn't do anything. I guess that does kind of look kind of cool like that. It does. It does have that sort of rough edge that you would get from like paint being kind of like hastily scrubbed in. And I think, yeah, leave those, like, those little breaks there where you don't quite cover it, completely consistently, because that just looks like broken paint, like paint chips. Yeah, I really, this is actually turning out really good. Sweet. I like it. Okay, cool. It really looked like some goblin who thought he was an artist went in here and did his best to represent a human skull. Okay. I think I'm going to... We'll make this black, but not like completely black. We'll make it a dark red. Like that. Should I have an out? Should I make it outlined? Nah. Okay. I think that looks good. Now, where's my multiply layer? Okay, right here. We're gonna put that on top. Ooh, my tablet's kind of skewed on the tabletop, so it's the line's going off to the side. Ah. What the heck? For some reason, I don't know, maybe I'm just used to drawing with that grid, that snap to grid. Nah, something's off. This is like going to the side for some reason. Okay, that's better. Now these grid lines, notice how they're taking away from the skull, the clarity of the skull painting. I'll just go back in and brighten everything up around the center so that it won't compete so much. Okay. Where's my skull? Let's go back in with that chalky. But we'll do white now. Whoa. What happened there? Okay, now it's time for the cracks. I'm going to try to avoid putting them in the skull because the grout lines are already competing with it a little bit. So on a completely different note, I've been doing a lot of drawing and not a lot of talking. When I was growing up, I was a huge He-Man fan, like really, really into He-Man, like a lot of kids my age. And I've been, seeing little bits and pieces here of this new Masters of the Universe movie coming out, or if it already came out, I don't know. But I was kind of skeptical of it because I haven't really found a whole lot of movies that have come out recently to be really that good or very sort of interesting to watch. Same thing with Masters of the Universe. I was like, it's just going to be another highly over-edited special effects thing. And a little scene came on YouTube this morning of like this fight between Man-at-Arms and Trapjaw, and I figured, might as well just click on it and see what it's like. It starts off with like this sort of Skeletor army fleet thing coming in and invading Eternia, and right off the bat, there's just a million things going on all over the place. Like the camera is just whipping around. There's billions of people. There's all kinds of lights and explosions. It's just like a stimulation overload. And I was like, okay, so that is what this thing is going to be about. But the more I watched it, with I forget the name of the actor who's playing Man-at-Arms, but he's really good. His performance is actually really good. And so I started kind of getting into it a little bit, and then as it went on, when this fight started happening, I think Trapjaw is probably one of the coolest He-Man villains of the whole series. So to see him kind of battle it out with Man-at-Arms, it was actually really good how they did it, the choreography and everything. And I will admit that by the end of it, and I'm not going to spoil it, even though it is on the internet for everyone to see. I want to watch the movie now. It's actually pretty good. So there's that. Okay. We got our cracks in. Now we can do our color dodge layer. Just got a notification from Walmart. My order is being prepared. You see what I mean? I have to cut corners with the amount of time it takes to do everything. And so that's why I'm doing live streaming, and that's why I'm ordering my groceries to be delivered. It's kind of interesting seeing how that color dodge works over top of the multiply layer. So I think if I get enough engagement with these kinds of videos, I might go back in with I might go back in to continue this dungeon maybe. In addition to the floor tiles and like the wall or like door tiles, could do some actual figure miniatures, paper miniatures, or just like swappable tokens you can put over top, like pit traps or cave-ins or spear traps, something like that, So if this is something that you're at least mildly interested in, please leave a like or a comment, because that'll help boost the engagement and get this out there to more people, and I'd appreciate it. Yeah, that's pretty close. I think what I need to do... Oh, these cracks are kind of distracting, because I want the skull to be more of the focal point. So I think I'll just go around and soften everything. And then on my multiply layer, where is it? This layer, I can brighten it up a little. Like that. Now, that does kind of diminish the grid, so I can go back in and refine that. And that's another thing I really love about digital painting is you want to make these choices and you want to be able to do these things in oil painting, but you gotta wait for the dry time. So what you end up doing is you just end up fussing endlessly because you have this paint that just it stays wet. You can't layer, you can't. So if I was making an oil painting, in order to lighten up all of those cracks that were dark, we'd have to wait for it to dry. Then we'd have to do, I don't know, like either a transparent or like a semi-opaque glaze to soften the darkness of the cracks, which would mean waiting for everything to dry. Then we'd have to wait for it to dry again before we could go back in and do what I'm doing now, which is darkening the grid lines again. So what I would do as an oil painter would be just keep lathering paint on and fussing over it, and that would kind of ruin the effect. Okay, I think I'm going to see what happens if I lower the opacity of this just a little bit. And then I wonder, I'm going to try to do an outline again and see. Yeah, I think I like that better with it being slightly transparent, but with a little bit of an outline around it. Yeah, it looks pretty good from far away. Okay, I like it. I'm going to stick with that. Just clean it up and it'll be ready to go on Patreon in a little bit. Oops. Okay, so let's recap. I've got boss room, doorway, open doorway, closed doorway, corridor, green room, tan room, and stairs down. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 tiles. It's all going to go on Patreon in a second here. And I'm going to check my analytics and see how this video did. If it does good, then I will continue making them. But thanks for watching, and I'll see